Yeah, hi everybody. I'm an Aboriginal queer non-binary person coming to you today, so this is in that context. My mother sits next to me. Her name's Caroline Anderson, and we're on stolen Gadigal land. My brother and my mum's son is Wayne Fella Morrison, who died in custody in 2016. Abolitionist scholar Sharon Dev Singh explains that at the end of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody in April 1991, one Aboriginal person was dying in custody every 3 weeks. 30 years later, Aboriginal people are dying in custody every 5 days. A number of our families, including Senator Dodson and Senator Thorpe, recently requested to meet with the Prime Minister. So when will the government sit down with Aboriginal families like mine and actually listen to our solutions? Maybe, June?
Mm-hmm.
Trent.
Well, I think it is important that government listen to the stories of people who have been through the awful circumstances that you have been, and both the state and the federal level. So I'm happy to pass on that request if we talk afterwards. But I think listening to your experiences is important. We're coming up to the 30th anniversary of the Royal Commission. Black deaths in custody remain too high, way too high. But what really worries me is that we're seeing probably in many instances, and Teela will know this better than me, a worsening trend in relation to incarceration of Indigenous Australians. So I think one of the fundamental points the Royal Commission made was that the basic problem was that too many Indigenous Australians were being locked up too often, and that's really at the root of what we've got to try to address. I wouldn't profess to know the answers. I really don't. But I'm happy to try and facilitate that for you and your family.
Lattouf, sorry, I wanted to bring Teela back in on this. Clearly, the statistics since that Royal Commission was handed down have not improved. We're talking about 5 deaths, Indigenous deaths in custody since the start of March this year. Do you have a view as to, given the work that you do, as to why this has not changed? This hasn't moved. We have not shifted the dial.
I just want to say, Lattouf, I'm so sorry for your loss, and you have been on the front line of this battle, along with many other families, for so long now, and including your mum. And I absolutely do hope that you get heard and the dignity to have the seat at the table and have your lived experiences shared and listened to and acted upon. As a First Nations person, 30 years after the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody, I have now become a lawyer for many different reasons, and it is so heartbreaking to know, as you alluded to, Senator Dodson said the other day in estimates, we're here at the 30th anniversary and there's almost 500 deaths, and the response from Senator Stoker was vile. It was just a dismissive, and it
What was it?
She said all lives matter.
Yes.
In the Senate. If we're still using the rhetoric employed by white supremacists, then I think we've got a problem. We're not even acknowledging the problem, let alone addressing it.
And just back to your question, which is there were 339 recommendations out of that Royal Commission, and the inconsistencies between the states and the feds and who's taking responsibility for implementing those is just so unclear, it's so incoherent, and what we see as a result is more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people dying. And I think there are many layers to this issue, but for example, this is state-sanctioned violence. This is state-sanctioned violence against the bodies of Black and brown people in this country, where it has become part of the narrative in this country that Aboriginal people die in custody, and there's no accountability for that. And I think we need to remember that part of the core recommendations was ensuring the self-determination and structural changes around accountability and processes that are independent of the government. And I think that it's just so important that, that families who with the lived experiences continue to be heard. And you have to have, so for example, if you've got police over-policing Black and brown communities where they're trained to, respond in particular ways, what you're seeing is if there is a particular death or passing, that there is no accountability, because that's how they're trained to respond. Like, we need to address the issue at so many different levels, and I just think the families who have experienced this need the dignity to be heard at front and centre. And I should say, you know, this Saturday there is a National Day of Action that the families who have experienced this are calling, so everyone needs to turn up on the front line for those, but to also do the work every day and to ensure this is not an Aboriginal problem, this is an Australian problem. Everyone in this country needs to prioritise the fact that we need to act on this issue. And until we do, there will be no truth and there will be no justice for these families or First Nations peoples.